Alright, we are finally coming to the end of this Larry review series with Leisure Suit Larry 7, Love for Sale. This installment begins directly after Larry 6, where Shamra dumps Larry and Larry accidentally sets his bed on fire. This opening section introduces us to a new cartoony art style, to the new revised UI, and the return of the parser system, which I will discuss a little bit later. So, Larry escapes the flames, and then goes on a cruise on the PMS Bouncy, the ship of Captain Thigh. On the ship, Larry of course gets the shittiest cabin, and on board the ship, Larry, along with all the other men, enters a manliness competition, with a grand prize of a night in the captain's cabin. As always, Larry encounters several beautiful women on board the ship, including a snooty librarian, a troubled clothes designer, professional gambler, and an avid nudist. But the ship's crew is also a bundle of laughs, from the grumpy bartender, to the cabin boy with the unpronounceable name, to Percy Purser, to the swabby Peg, whose mouth is too dirty even for this game. So much so that they actually have to censor most of her dialogue.
This goddamn salt air is rusting me f***ing leg socket. Yeah. Who the hell are you?
Now, what I really love about Larry 7 is the structure. Not only are you trying to impress multiple women on board the ship, the various challenges that you are trying to complete also give you additional goals to shoot for. So in other words, Larry 7 is the sort of game where if you get stuck on one puzzle, you don't have to run yourself ragged trying to figure it out, but instead can go try to figure out another one on board the ship. The art style is extremely cartoony, reminding me of a lot of other late 90s adventure games like Broken Sword, The Shadow of the Templars, and The Curse of Monkey Island. Now, the cutscenes do unfortunately have a high amount of animation errors, but I would not describe this game as looking bad by any stretch of the imagination. On the contrary, this is visually one of my favorite Larry games. Janet Rapson's voice performance is still great, and I love that in this game in particular, Larry and the narrator often get into arguments about stuff. Now, the parser system is a kind of artificial way by which Al Lowe clearly tried to make some of the puzzles a little bit more difficult. That is to say, while Larry has a set of actions that you can choose from freely, some of the correct actions are missing and you have to type in what you want Larry to do. However, after the first couple of times, you kind of learn to just try everything. And what I also love is that you can use the parser for dialogue options and such. As I mentioned before, Victorian Principles is probably one of my favorite characters in this game, as I featured the puzzle where you distract her in my favorite adventure game puzzles video, and I also love the fact that Vicky actually helps you win one of the competitions directly. Generally speaking, this game has a great visual sense of humor, and in fact quite a bit more nudity, which is why I'm trying very hard not to show too much of it. There's also a built-in minigame called Where's Dildo, where you keep finding these, well, you know, around the ship, and if you manage to find all of them, you actually get a slight variation on the game's ending. Speaking of the ending, once again, just like Larry 6, I do feel that this is a game where the journey is more interesting than the destination, as at the end of the day, Captain Thigh turns out to be a bit of a bitch. One of the other things that I'm not a big fan of is the navigation on the ship, which is done mostly through the map, and this can be a little confusing the first time you play. I really did like the fact that you could just walk around freely in La Costa Lada in the previous game, but again, this is another one of those things, once you've played far enough, you kinda get used to. Also, while the soundtrack is CD quality this time, I feel that the soundtrack is a little bit too chill, and that some of the pieces of music don't really mesh together very well. There are, however, many recognizable disco songs in the soundtrack, so you can at least say Larry is really in his element. Nevertheless, Larry 7 is simply so robust, so full of content, so funny, and I am a big fan of the art style as well, that it probably surprises absolutely no one when I say that this is my favorite Larry game. Although I do have to warn that this is not a Larry game that you're going to beat very easily. Most of the Larry games are pretty difficult to get into, but I would say 1 and 6 are at least contained enough that while some of the puzzles are intentionally cryptic, you can actually figure out a lot of it without much difficulty. And those were the Leisure Suit Larry games. Tell me, what is your favorite Leisure Suit Larry game? I'm TheHande Mäkinen. See you on the next one.